What is happening, everybody? It is a little bit of a new version of the NBA strategy show here. I'm pre-recording a video, and it's for a couple of reasons. First off, only one game NBA slates going forward, so not quite as much to cover. And then also, Josh is going to be out for a little bit. He's dealing with some family stuff, so I just want to give him all the time off that he wants and that he needs. So I'm going to be filling in his content in place, and I can't do all the stuff that Josh could do from a production standpoint. So I'm going to do what I'm able to do, and that is this video that I'm putting together for you guys right here. So I'm going to be doing this for all the remaining NBA slates here and just covering these one-game slates. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build lineups in The Sims for both DraftKings and FanDuel, and then look at all the results here. We'll look at which lineups are expected to be duped the most on the one-game slates. We'll look at which lineups project the best and then which players I get the most exposure to. And if you guys have any other comments, suggestions, things you'd like me to talk about, hit me up on Twitter. Let me know below in the comment section. We'll also do some giveaways on these videos. If you can do me a favor, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. And let's do a giveaway below. So we've got Odd Chopper, the sports betting product that we have as part of Stochastic. And I want to give away a free subscription to somebody, and we'll do one of these each day. We'll do a giveaway, give away one free sub to a person per day, and we'll do some sort of contest. So the one for today, let's do which bench player in tonight's Pacers Celtics game, a little bit of potential blowout risk here, scores the most fantasy points. So it could be either team and just which player scores the most DraftKings fantasy points. One person who gets the answer correct, I'll give you a free Odd Chopper subscription. We'll announce the winner on tomorrow's show. So let's get it started here. Don't want to waste too much of your guys' time at top. So I've already built out lineups for DraftKings here, and we'll do FanDuel right after this. So first thing I'm going to do is favorite the top 150 lineups that I've built out here in the contest generator. And let's start by looking at the number one overall top projected lineup by simulated ROI. And this one projects out quite a bit better than all the other ones here. Leaves a little bit of salary on the table. Also has a little bit of a unique captain in Jaylen Brown, although maybe he isn't all that unique. We'll see when we check the ownership projections here in a second. But we've got Jaylen Brown in the multiplier spot, Al Horford, Andrew Nembhard, Derek White, Drew Holiday, and Pascal Siakam. This lineup is not expected to be duped, at least not in the initial run that I've done here. So this is our best projected lineup by Sim ROI, and this is how I like to sort my lineups for these one-game slates. Well, really for all slates that I'm using the Sims for, but in particular for these one-game slates, it really matters where you want to have unique lineups. You want to have lineups that aren't duped, because I'll show you guys here. If we sort by dupes, there are a bunch of lineups in here that are expected to be duped massive amounts of times. And a lot of these are actually the highest projected lineups by fantasy point projections. See, if I just sorted by the Sims here by fantasy point projections, none of these lineups are projected to be in my top 150 lineups by Sim ROI. And the main reason is because these lineups are duped so many times. You can see all the times these are expected to be duped. And this is just across the 5,000 lineups that I've built out. Whereas how many lineups are in the main contest today? How many entries? So the main contest on DK today, has 30,000 entries. So think of it this way. Anything that I built out of 5,000 lineups, it's going to be like 6x the dupes. So this lineup's probably going to dupe somewhere around 300 times. This lineup probably around 300 times. And these lineups just below 300 dupes. So it just makes it so hard for these lineups to be expected to be plus EV, because even if they win, you're splitting first place with hundreds of other people. But these are the lineups that are expected to be duped the most. And one thing you'll see really common here, Jason Tatum's the captain in almost all these heavily duped lineups. Tatum. Here's one Jaylen Brown, Tatum, Brown, Tatum. So of these top, 15 or so most duped lineups, 13 of them had Jason Tatum at the captain. So one of the easiest ways if you're hand building a lineup today to make it different from the field is simply going to be just don't play Jason Tatum in the captain spot over on DK. And then if we go back over here and look at same deal, just some of the ownership sums of lineups, some of these ones won't be duped quite as heavily, but a lot of them leave salary on the table. So another way that you could make a lineup a little bit unique is leave some salary on the table. So this one still has some dupes, but leaves $400 in salary on the table. We have this lineup, which is a Jason Tatum captain lineup. It leaves $10,000 in salary on the table, so it only had one dupe. So just a couple of easy ways that we're identifying here. Leave salary on the table, which is just kind of a general rule for how to make more unique lineups in Showdown. And then as well, just maybe getting away from Jason Tatum in the captain spot. Let's go and look at our exposures now, and we'll see what it is that we're getting to in the captain spot as well as the flex spot for DK. And at captain, you will see that I am still getting to a decent chunk of Jason Tatum. He is my most rostered captain, but way less than the field. We have him projected for 53% captain ownership. That is crazy, crazy popular. So if you are going with Tatum in the captain spot, you either want some really contrarian utility plays to pair him with, or you want to leave that salary on the table to make that lineup unique. But as it stands right now, this is the biggest underweight stand that I have in my initial run of lineups. It's just not getting Tatum anywhere near the field. And then pretty much anybody else you get to is kind of somewhat different at captain, other than Jaylen Brown. We actually do have him here projected for 16% ownership. So only a fraction of what Tatum is projected for. And I come in a little bit overweight to the field. But let's look at some single-digit owned captain options that are also standing out here. Tyrese Halliburton, he's projected for sub 10% ownership. He's in 20% of my lineups in the captain spot. Pascal Siakam, and then Derek White. These are a couple more reasonable contrarian captains to get to, whereas we've got 3% captain ownership going to Jrue Holiday, and I do have him in 5% of lineup. So, yeah, technically overweight to him, but I know for a lot of you who are watching that are playing, 1, 2, 3 lineups, maybe you're not going to be diving that deep. The guys that I'm getting to more of that are contrarian captains, Derek White, Pascal Siakam, Tyrese Halliburton, those are the most reasonable ways to differentiate yourself in the captain spot. If we go ahead and look at the flex here, let's see, what do we have for Jason Tatum? About in line with the field on Tatum, although he's not expected to be all that popular in the flex spot, which is just because of how popular it is in the captain spot. North of 50% captain ownership, around 40% pool ownership. So on the aggregate, like we had all of the ownership to Tatum together here. We've got Tatum projected for right around 90% ownership over on DK. He's going to be super popular today. Jrue Holiday is a cheaper option that isn't too crazy popular. I'm overweight to, also is slightly overweight in that captain spot. So he looks like somebody good to get to, as does Derek White. Derek White overweight to him in both the captain and the flex spot, and only 34% ownership for him as a flex play. So Derek White does look like one of the best overall options that we could get to for this slate tonight. Let's see who else is standing out as far as leverage options. So coming in underweight to Jaylen Brown pretty heavily in the flex spot. He's projected for 55.4% ownership. So he looks super popular. Isaiah Jackson, another really popular punt option here, projected for 26% ownership. He's only in 15% of my top lineups. And then Ben Shepherd coming off the bench, only projected for 11.83 fantasy points. But when you consider how cheap he is and the kind of salary savings he opens up, the field is getting to him close to 20% of lineups, whereas I actually have him in sub 10%. But on the flip side, let's look at some flex plays to be overweight to on the cheaper end. One of them being Al Horford. Let's see, what is Horford's actual price? I don't think he's crazy cheap, but he's not all that expensive either. Yeah, Horford just $7,200 in the flex spot. So 19% ownership. But Horford's not somebody I typically really love to play for DFS purposes when the Celtics are mostly healthy. Now, I know that we do still have Kristaps Porzingis out for today. There's a little bit of a capped upside normally for Horford, taking aside the fact he just scored, was like gazillion fantasy points. I think it was 58.5 in the Celtics' last win to a closeout last series. But on a one-game slate where you're going to be getting a starter with only 19% ownership that every once in a while flashes an upside, I think that Horford's a contrarian option to be considering. We already talked about Jrue Holiday and Derek White. Miles Turner also has modest ownership. Let's see, are there any really contrarian guys that we're getting to here? Not really. TJ McConnell is 24% owned, so he's not all that popular, but it's really Al Horford here at 19% as the one that I am finding myself most overweight to. And if you look at some of the super low owned plays, you got guys like Sam Hauser projected for 4% ownership, Jalen Smith at 1%, Luke Cornett at 13%. So if you want to build a lineup that's going to play for a game script of a blowout, where maybe you're fading some of the stars, leaving a bunch of salary on the table, something along those lines, these are the players that I think you could potentially gravitate towards, like Jalen Smith, Sam Hauser, Luke Cornett. But I'm not building too many lineups that have that kind of game script. 12% of Luke Cornett, some of him, but not really all that much. So that is pretty much everything we have to look at here as an overview for DraftKings. So let's go into the contest generator now, and we'll do it for the FanDuel side of things. And also, one more time, if you guys haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Don't forget, I'll give away a free OddsShopper subscription. Just let me know below in the comments, which bench player do you think scores the most fantasy points tonight? So I've got lineups built out here for FanDuel. Just open those up there, and let's sim the slate. What's the payout to first on FanDuel? I know on DraftKings it was 20%. FanDuel for today, it is big contest on FanDuel It is $150,000 prize pool with 30K up top. So we'll also go to 20% on this, and we'll run the contest sim. Oftentimes for FanDuel, it is quite a bit harder to get reasonably contrarian than it is on DraftKings, just because when you got something like Jason Tatum, while he's going to be super, super popular in the MVP spot on FanDuel, just as he is on DraftKings, without that salary multiplier, it really does change the equation, because you can't really make a case for being like, hey, I'm going to try playing like Al Horford in the MVP spot on FanDuel or Derek White, because it's just so unlikely those guys are going to be the highest scorer. But let's see what the Sims say as far as options for us to be getting to. Almost done here. All right, favorite the top 150 lineups. Number one overall projected lineup by Sim ROI for FanDuel on first run. It is Tyrese Halliburton in the MVP spot with Pascal Siakam, Derek White, Andrew Nembhard, Jrue Holiday. And this one actually does project to be unique, even though it uses all the salary. The reason is because it doesn't have Jason Tatum. And any lineup that doesn't have Jason Tatum on FanDuel is going to be crazy contrarian. And I do think it makes the most sense if you don't have a Jason Tatum MVP lineup. Probably would have to be Tyrese Halliburton or Jaylen Brown in that MVP spot, but I will see what the Sims have to say about that. Also looking through lineups here, 3-2 Indy, 3-2 Boston, 3-2, 3-2. Yeah, it looks like the lineup's skewing a little bit more towards the Boston side, but like nothing that's predominantly showing up as a stack sort of build for FanDuel. Let's look at the dupes here, and yeah, none of these lineups showing up in my top 150, and these are the lineups that are also going to be projected the best. And no surprise here, Jason Tatum in the MVP spot in every single one of these heavily duped lineups, and also they all use all the salary other than this one that just leaves the 500 on the table. So if you're playing a lineup on FanDuel, here are the things you absolutely should not do. Do not build a lineup that has Jason Tatum in the MVP spot and uses all the salary. It is almost certainly going to be duped hundreds and hundreds of times. So like this lineup here, Tatum, Brown, Siakam, Isaiah Jackson, Jrue Holiday, it projects for a bunch of fantasy points. You see some of these ones up top here are the highest projected lineups by fantasy points, but almost all of them super, super heavily duped. So that's going to be the easiest way to avoid some dupes. Either if you're playing Jason Tatum in the MVP spot, leave at least like $1,000 in salary on the table, or just roster somebody else in the MVP. If you win, you're going to be splitting with hundreds, and not even maybe like 1,000 people on FanDuel if you're playing a Jason Tatum lineup that uses all the salary. So let's go into the exposures now for FanDuel, and we'll look at all the different spots. So starting with the MVP, and yeah, we've got Jason Tatum is projected for 82.3% ownership in the MVP spot. So while I do have 31% of him, a lot of those lineups are going to be ones that leave some salary on the table, a little bit more unique looking. It is very difficult to build good lineups if you're playing a set of 150 that matches the field's exposure to Jason Tatum in the MVP spot. Tyrese Halliburton, we've got him projected for just 6% MVP ownership, and then Jaylen Brown at 8.8%. So kind of what I was speculating was going to be the case when we ran these FanDuel lineups is that if you do want to be different at the MVP spot, go to either Jaylen Brown or Tyrese Halliburton. They have a somewhat realistic chance to be higher fantasy scores than Jason Tatum. You're just getting a crazy ownership discount, 9 and 6% as compared to 82%. And then just nobody else getting any kind of MVP ownership. We've got Pascal Siakam just 2%, and he did wind up in 8% of my top 150 lineups. Let's look at the pro spot. So as far as the other multiplier spots are concerned, let's see, what is the ownership on some of these guys? None of my top 150 lineups had Jason Tatum in the pro spot here. Actually, let's go to the star before we go to the pro, because the star spot has the slightly higher multiplier, and then we'll go back to the pro. So star spot, I do have some lineups here with Jason Tatum, and this is also if you want to play somebody else in the MVP spot, go to Jason Tatum in this star spot, and you could be a little bit different that way as well, because Tatum, considering all the ownership he has in the 1.5x spot, just 7.4% ownership going to him in the star spot. A little bit more spread out here. See where the field is really going heavily is Tyrese Halliburton and Jaylen Brown in this spot, where the players I'm getting to are some of Jaylen Brown, but underweight to him. Miles Turner getting a good amount overweight to Miles Turner, 17% of him, when he's only got 6% ownership in this spot. And then a Jason Tatum, a way to get different. Jrue Holiday, Derek White, those are a couple of other star considerations to differentiate your lineups. And then in the pro spot, getting to Miles Turner the most, followed by Derek White, Drew Holiday, then some Pascal Siakam. There's no real chalk in the pro spot. Pascal Siakam, the only player projected for 20% ownership. Derek White, 19. Miles Turner, 15. Jaylen Brown, 14. Drew Holiday, 13. Then 7% for each of Halliburton and Al Horford here. And then, like I said before, just nothing expected out of Jason Tatum in this spot, at least as far as field exposure goes. Flex spots. Let's see who I have the most of in the flex. TJ McConnell standing out. A lot of times the flex spot on FanDuel is just who are the cheapest players with the most amount of upside that can help us save salary and get to some more of the top fantasy producers in those multiplier spots. But TJ McConnell, he's showing up in nearly half of my lineups. He by far looks like the best option to get to in the flex spot. A little bit of popularity on him. He does look like the most popular flex play at 31% projected ownership, but still, I'm a little bit overweight to that number in initial run. And then Drew Holiday, Al Horford, Aaron Nesmith, the other players that I'm getting to north of 20% of here in the flex. Let's look at leverage. Coming in underweight to Isaiah Jackson, Luke Cornett most predominantly in the flex spot, and then players that I'm overweight to here, Derek White, TJ McConnell, Drew Holiday, and then slightly to guys like Obi Toppin as well as Miles Turner. So guys, there's a rundown of everything on initial run of Sims for both FanDuel and DraftKings for tonight's one-game slate. If you guys found this content helpful, just simply like the video. And if there's other stuff you'd like me to talk about on these videos, just let me know below in the comment section. It's something new that we're trying out as a new piece of content while I'm filling in for Josh. And whatever, so this is content for you guys. So if there's something else that you would find to be helpful, just let me know, and then I could adapt and adjust. And also giveaway. Don't forget, leave a comment below which player off the bench scores the most fantasy points. And then we're going to pick one person who gets the answer correct. I'll put you guys into a random number generator. And then I'll pick one person to get a free OddsSharper subscription, which I'll announce on the show tomorrow. So thank you guys very much for watching. Peace out. Good luck. I'll be on NBA Live NBA Live Before Lock tonight with Eric Lindquist, and that is going to be at, let's see, what is the time of today? It's 8 o'clock. So 7:30 to 8 p.m. Eric and I will be on NBA Live Before Lock, and then I'll be sticking around on Playback to watch the game with you guys a little bit as well if you want to check us out on Playback. So hope to see you guys later tonight. Peace out. Good luck with your lineups today.